Welcome back to Voices of Impact, the space where we explore leadership beyond tactics, algorithms, and hustle culture, and into clarity, presence, and real human connection. Today's episode is a powerful conversation for founders, B2B leaders, marketers, and sales teams who feel the pressure to perform on LinkedIn, yet sense that something deeper is missing. So we're talking about a truth that often gets lost in growth strategies and playbooks, right? So story beats strategy when it comes to trust, influence, and real pipeline growth. So I'm excited to welcome Jaclyn 𝗬𝗏, founder of 𝗬𝗏 Digital, to explore why human connection, not just positioning or posting frequency, is the real B2B growth lever on LinkedIn. So Jaclyn brings nearly 2 decades of corporate marketing experience and blends vision with execution in a way that's both grounded and refreshingly human. So through 𝗬𝗏 Digital, she helps B2B teams move from meh to memorable by designing LinkedIn strategies that are rooted in buyer behavior, lived experiences, and real business outcomes, not vanity metrics, right? The bro marketing, we're not here for that. So Jaclyn and I deeply shares this belief that people don't buy because of positioning, but it's really because they feel seen, understood, and they actually trust you. So this is a conversation about moving beyond that noise, reclaiming your presence, and using storytelling as a strategic advantage, not a soft skill. So Jaclyn, welcome to Voices of Impact. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing. So let's get into it. So can you share the origin story of 𝗬𝗏 Digital and what personally drove you to focus on LinkedIn as a pipeline driving platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're making me feel old with 2 decades of experience. But yeah, I spent my career in the marketing communication space, and I was marketing our own company in my former job and found that LinkedIn was really powerful for us. Our CEO was very active, which was not as normal at the time. This was a couple years ago, maybe 5-ish, around the COVID time. And I put some intentionality into our LinkedIn presence, and I was able to grow our corporate page by 25% in just a quarter. With just a couple shifts to the way that we brought our message to market and we're using the platform, and it was really fun and exciting. So before I knew it, I was offering to help a couple friends that had a business, and I was an accidental freelancer, and one thing led to another, and now here we are, 𝗬𝗏 Digital 4 years later.
Nice. I love this. I love this. So much conviction, confidence, kudos to you, and congrats. That's amazing. So how did your thinking about presence and sense of self evolve as you moved from individual tactics to like designing company level LinkedIn strategies for other companies?
Yeah, I mean, my sense of self has shifted just as I've become more confident in the platform. I've used it more both for my own business and helping others to use it for their business. And I think the two are closely connected because even though it's a corporate entity, at the end of the day, on the other side of that purchase, on the other side of that screen, there's a variety of humans there, right? The big difference in B2B purchasing is you're often selling into a machine, selling into a team, and they all have these preconceived notions or ideas about what they want in a solution. And so it's not the same exactly for a one-to-one transaction where you're only selling to one person who can just swipe that credit card. And so I think in terms of like your presence and whatnot, you have to remember what you're working into on the other side of the equation.
And what's that one vulnerability or misstep early in your career? So going into that storytelling here itself that later became a nugget of wisdom for your clients.
It's a great question. I mean, really countless. The fact that I have been in corporate for about 20-ish years, I think is a big advantage because I've seen the impact when a message or a communication isn't thought out from the different angles. And so there have been times where maybe it wasn't my misstep, but I was definitely on the team. I was involved in something, and a message or a communication wasn't fully thought through. And so I'm constantly thinking, all right, let's just take a quick step back and just assess, if there's a PR issue or if there's been a news story or if there's just any sensitivity, let's just think through this post, this message, and make sure that we're not missing anything because in this day and age on social, you can go viral for something that you don't want to. And so just taking that beat before hitting publish has been worth its weight in gold.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and nowadays, like everyone's going viral, right? So you don't want to follow those trends, like we
Mhm.
said.
Well, you don't want to go viral for the wrong reasons either.
Exactly, exactly. It's like for the good reasons, but at the same time, like, we end up following trends and we don't even know why we're doing what. So being more intentional. So absolutely. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Going, let's expand into that. So what are the common fears leaders have about showing up vulnerably on LinkedIn? Because this is a huge thing that keeps coming up that people really struggle with. And how do you help them move past those fears?
Yeah, and it's person to person. Some people just don't want to be they're afraid to be too noisy or maybe take up space. Choose your flavor there. Some people are just afraid to be cringe or what will others think. And then other people are just afraid to keep up with it over the long term. Like if I start, what happens if I need to slow down or ramp down? So there's a little bit of a different strategy depending on what is holding each person back. But at the end of the day, LinkedIn is the largest concentration of B2B professionals anywhere on the social space right now. And so if you're not showing up, then you are just losing so much potential to find new people, to stay top of mind with the ones that you're already connected to. And so I try and talk about the cost of inaction when I'm addressing someone's fears, and then find a way to help them be present and show up in a way that feels right for them, because there's no there's no one way to do it. There's a couple different ways that you can approach it.
Yeah. And what would those costs of what would that cost of an action look like for them?
I mean, I think one is that you let whoever is your competitor own the narrative, right? So if you are not, like, I know we opened with talking about positioning isn't everything, but positioning is still important. And if you are not sharing your position, your company's position, then you let your competitors create their own messaging and differentiation, and you're just silent. We're all bombarded by more messages than ever. And if yours is not included in that, it is very easy um, to be forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes into the memorable, right? Talked about and be having that 1% positioning. And we call it the blue ocean, whether you're, having the B2B offers. So what makes you different, that unique value is very key. Getting clear on that first and making sure you're memorable in that sense is very important. So I love how you talked about that. And going from the met to memorable, I know that's your tagline. So I know, let's go into a little bit deeper, but what does that memorable presence look like on LinkedIn in 2026 right now?
Again, it's different for every person because, again, there's no one playbook or strategy, but I do feel that there's this element of sharing your lived experiences. There's been a huge shift over the past 12 to 18 months from, instead of how-to content, like how I did it, how we've done it. Here's what we've seen. Here's what's worked in the past. Here's where we tripped up. And it's not like, I went out of business, I went bankrupt, I failed, but there are lessons that we have learned. And so I say, if you're writing for someone that's like 2 or 3 steps behind you, that is a great way to think about, what would I have told myself a year ago? What would I tell someone just starting out? Those are easy insights and stories that you can share that feel more natural and aren't as cringe and are important for others to learn from.
And can you share an example of those kind of posts that directly create a pipeline or accelerated a sales conversation for you?
Ooh, that's a good question. So in terms of generating pipeline, for me, it's more like B2B sales cycles are very long, often.
Mhm.
Of course, there's some that are transactional, but a lot of them are on the longer side. And again, there's a committee and things take longer. So I think it more accelerates your pipeline than creates pipeline, because once you're on their radar, you can nurture them, you can share different case studies and battle stories and all the things. I think it helps a little bit more with like velocity.
Mhm.
But that being said, we by nature mentioned, we're all sharing on social, we're complaining on social, we're venting, we're asking for advice, we're jumping into the comments. So there's so much insight and customer voice information out there that I have seen smart entrepreneurs, smart biz dev folks use the conversations that are happening and have that be in like, hey, saw that you mentioned, could I share this? Or here's what we've seen. Or even just using the way that folks talk about the problem, saying like, hey, I've heard folks put it in XYZ language. Does that resonate with you? And it can be a great way to open up the conversation with someone. And I've seen that really help to either start a new sales conversation or further things when you are stuck a little bit in a sales cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about creating conversation and building the trust, right? So conversations, it makes the person feel seen, that just because I've gotten a lot of people from sales who are just like, hey, are you ready to like, accelerate this? And I'm like, yeah, like that's just a little cringe. I'm not interested. I get those messages versus like, hey, like, how are you doing? Like, have you, had this challenge before? What do you think? And adding value, right? So just giving like free adding value coming from a place of authenticity is really key in content creation right now. So absolutely, yeah. And for companies hesitant to invest on LinkedIn, what quick diagnostic do you use to show hidden opportunity and ROI potential?
So again, going back to the cost of inaction, I love to look at the competitors' feed space and are questions being addressed? Are they active in conversations? Because again, it just goes to show that if you are not present, if you are not partaking, then someone else will. And so that can be a way to show like, hey, if you were just responding to some more comments, you could get more mentions, you could get more tags. That opens visibility, that brings people in. But for me, LinkedIn is the best complement to your other strategies. And so I often will ask, it depends kind of what other go-to-market strategies they're employing. And then we figure out how it is that LinkedIn can best not only support, but hopefully amplify that.
Right, exactly. And going into types of content formats, because I know this is a huge thing that's been changing over time.
Yeah.
So which content formats would you believe that you're seeing like that drives the deepest connection, and why do you feel that way?
So for me, for connection, it's still video, but not the like TikTok-y, like kitschy ones, the real ones. Even so, not silly, but seemingly silly, like get ready for me or how, come to an event with me. People are nosy and curious by nature. And so they want to peek and be a little bit voyeuristic. And so that can really accelerate that know, like, trust factor because, again, there's a person at the end of the day. And if there's maybe two solutions or two providers and all things are equal, you're going to pick the one that you like and that you generally want to interact with and partner with. And so for me, video, although it might not get the reach that it was getting on this platform and that maybe like a carousel or something is getting, it really can help with that. I just vibe with this person. I have a gut feel that this is a good move for us. But that being said, like longer posts are trending and starting to work well because as the system has shifted towards this interest-based model, the keywords and the subject matter and the topical authority, it's easier for them to deduce in a longer post. So we're starting to see longer posts and longer form writing is starting to have a moment as well. I think we went really heavy on like the broers free, the short form, and people are hungry and craving for a different vibe that's not so formulaic.
Right. I do agree because I post a lot of long posts and also videos. And the video gets like traction, especially like the 30 to 45 branded clips. Those are just like a quick, because I know everyone has like a short attention span. So those are doing well. And then of course, inbound and outbound, right? So which one do you recommend that we start with? Because I know people are like, if I do inbound, it's going to take a longer time to get leads, but I'm also interested in getting revenues. Let's start with outreach. So how would you balance that too?
Yeah. So it's a great question. Just in terms of like your LinkedIn strategy, like creating content and hoping for them to come. Okay. So I think you have to be doing both because I like to say all roads lead to LinkedIn. If you go to a networking event, if you sponsor a golf tournament and you meet someone, you shake hands with them, they're probably going to link you up on LinkedIn to connect with you and they're going to want to check you out. They're going to see your profile and they're going to see your last couple posts. And so you need a little bit of a foundational presence, the inbound piece, even before you do the outbound, because if someone sends me even the best DM in the world and I go and I look at them and their profile says nothing, they don't have a point of view, they're not saying anything, then I don't want to move forward, or I'm not likely because someone else who's doing all the things is going to just look like a more solid bet, right? Like people are going to gamble on doing business with you. Budgets are tight. And if you need to justify up the executive chain that you need to work with this company or this person or this founder, they're going to vet you. And so again, having the foundational elements taken care of first before you layer on the outreach is important.
Right. And I totally agree because I know a lot of people just do one or the other, but you need to have both aspects and strategies. Like you said, build the trust and then have the conversation in the DMs and then go from there, right? And like you said, there's so much like, people reaching out and, scams and stuff like that. So really vet before you talk to anyone and make sure they're like really real and authentic. They have a presence, they have an authority. So absolutely. Going into that, I know we talked about people like how video's doing well right now, but Like we talked about, there is a lot of imposter syndrome. So how do you advise clients who feel that? Like, I want to get on video, but I'm scared to put myself out there. Like when they're asked to be visible on LinkedIn, like how would you overcome those visibility blocks for those people?
Mm, that's a great question too. Partnering with someone to have a conversation is a great way to do content. I have a friend who that is his business model. He jumps on a side by side like this, asks questions, and then uses that to chop up video. Even if you don't work with a provider, you could ask a friend to jump on with you. If you don't have anyone like that, you could come up with questions and like pretend someone's asking you. I like to then pretend I'm talking to a friend. I find it easy to just open up my phone and start babbling away. But I always am thinking, like, who am I talking to? Who is on the other side? I think about the person who might be asking me that question. And that helps to remove some of the temptation to be too polished.
Right. Right. Amazing. Yes. So getting just kind of starting small and talking to like a friend, just practicing on your phone. That's what I do. You can do a lot of takes. So just taking one step at a time is very key to like overcoming those visibility blocks and understanding like, why do I feel this way, where it's coming from, right? So
Yeah.
it's first before we get into the strategy piece, because that's also
Yeah.
very important, right? So
No,
regulate
that's
yourself. Yeah.
yeah, that's a great point because often I'll be like, all right, tell me, what are you worried about? What's your fear? What's your concern? And everyone has, again, a different reasoning behind it.
Right. Exactly. And knowing yourself first, right? So, and not having the pressure, because there is pressure that I have to be like this person, but do it at your own pace. Do what works for you.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like I know some people, for me, like connection, podcasting, events are something that I'm good at, but not everyone's comfortable, right? So start out with like long form written, because I know a lot of people said they want to write instead of like actually talk and do a video. So start small and do what works for you and then build up, right? So that's very important with building your presence. And how do you measure these shifts though? I know these are intangible, like confidence or perceived authority. So clients see progress, right? So speaking on like taking small steps, but we look at everyone's like how many number of likes I get or followers, and we're so caught up in that. But the real success is like confidence. But how do you measure that though?
Yeah. Some of it you can't really measure. Some of it is truly a gut feel. You feel it inside, like, oh my goodness, this is feeling easier. I don't worry every time I hit publish. I don't feel the need to stress over, was it too long? I got 3 likes. I always say that when you're starting to post on LinkedIn, it's not the content that's the hard part, it's the crickets. Because as you're building up an audience, it's really hard when you're not getting much engagement or feedback. And so I found that after a couple weeks, couple months of doing this, people are like, oh my God, I'm getting it now. It feels easier. It's taking less time. And then eventually you'll start to just get a comfort level reaching out and having those conversations in the DMs. And it doesn't feel so hard. Like I still sometimes my stomach jumps up into my chest and I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna reach out to someone.
Right.
It's not supernatural, but to your point earlier, coming at it from the spirit of curiosity and adding value and being helpful is really helpful to me as I think through my outreach strategy.
Yeah. And I love what you said is a gut feeling. So I want to put this out there is this is something that's so important that I noticed is I know we're pressured to like consistently post twice a week. We see all of this online, but it's really from a place of, like you said, do I feel energized when I post it? Like I want to share my story today. Do I feel inspired to write this story? Did I get that idea out of my head rather than like, I have to do it today because someone on a guru told me on LinkedIn to do it, right? So it's that instinct, right? And especially for women, like following your intuition. Like if you feel like you have that creative idea to post, then go ahead and do it. But if you don't feel like it, don't, right? So don't force yourself. Let it come from within, right? So, and that's what this is all about. And what comes from within, like you said, it just naturally shows up. And I realized this when I just show up because like I feel like it and get that inspiration. I get more, outreach, right? People are reaching out to me and they're like, hey, like I love your energy today, right? So just kind of looking at those things before posting is very also important. Because it's really the real you, right? You like you said, you want to be polished. Okay, awesome. And can you walk us through your core framework for turning lived experiences into repeatable content engines for B2B teams?
It's so hard. I've really struggled to like formulaic
Right.
spell it out, but some of it's a gut feel. I have a conversation with someone and ask a couple questions, and it's like that needs to be shared. No one else knows that. And I think we all start to feel like there's some kind of bias. I know there's an official name for it, but we feel like what we know is not that big of a deal or not that special or not that smart. And then you start talking to someone else and they have no idea about it, right? And so I think having a partner, that's part of the value, is having a partner to pull that out and encourage you to share that. So it's a little bit less of a framework. And more of, again, that gut feel and helping people work through that. But that being said, I will say also, once you have 3 to 6 months of content, there's a huge potential for repurposing. And I do have a framework of repurposing, and I've shared that before, but any given topic, I like to approach it from different angles. And so, not just how to do this, but here's what I learned when I did this. Here are 3 mistakes. Here's what everyone gets wrong about this. Here's how you do it right. So you're saying the same thing over and over again, but you're approaching it from different angles. And so once you get a feel for how to hit on it, and that is part of the framework in terms of the content and the repurposing, that can make things so much easier too, and save you, because you're not having to reinvent the wheel every single time.
Right. And I love how you said, like, you kind of follow your gut instinct and look at like a person and understand curiosity rather than, because I know I've seen so many people who like, here's a framework, which is totally fine, but it's not like a math formula all the time. It's like just really understanding and speaking to a client or a potential lead and being like, okay, where are your, blind spots? Where are the gaps, right? So going it from that aspect is very nice for building more presence and authority. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So advice. So what's one mindset shift leaders need to make to move from posting noise to creating influence on LinkedIn?
So continuing away from how to, because anyone can search that in Google now. Anyone can pop into their favorite AI tool and get a pretty easy how to. So really challenging yourself to take a step back and think through what you've seen on the day-to-day, right? We are all experts in our chosen subject matter, and we see the pains and the frustrations. And that is where I find you can have the most impact, and you start to resonate with people. And then when you think that through, like, what are the things that are, and keeping people up at night is so cliche, but truly, where are folks spinning? Where are folks getting stuck? When you think and look at things through that lens, that is when you're going to get DMs of like, get out of my head. Like, that was so helpful. I hit this all the time. You're so right. That is when I find when you are able to find that chord and that balance, that's a bit of a mindset shift from just, I have to post 5 times a week. I'm going to follow these templates. Anyone can do that now. Anyone.
Right.
Without having to try too hard. So it's not as easy, and you have to dig deep and put some thought and intentionality to it. But that is a big shift, and that is when you're going to find more success.
Right. I do absolutely agree. Is really understanding the pain points. What are people going through? Then, like you talked about, just following some trends. So understand yourself first, what you do, get clarity, and then also your audience, right? So absolutely. And going into the next question, which is very important because there are a lot of corporate leaders out there. I see that they want to put themselves out there, but they're short on time. So they're like me and I just have a very busy schedule. So how can these leaders begin building presence when they're short on time and resources?
So in the corporate space, I would certainly leverage if you have an internal marketing or comms person that can help, because we naturally have frameworks, templates, ideas, thoughts, and they can be your biggest support to help you in that. They can also help you to make sure that you're connecting the dots and keeping everything like on brand. So that can be one thing. And then the other thing I would say is to remember that social is meant to be social. It's not meant to be a broadcast channel. And so it is so much easier to just find where the conversations are already happening and jump into those than try and start net new conversations. It's a great way to ease into the world of LinkedIn. So just spend some time finding people that are already talking about your subject matter, your problems, see what conversations are happening to your comfort level, chime in on a couple and start to build that muscle and realize that, like, it's not the end of the world if you make a typo or you're not that cringe. It's a great way to kind of ease into things, and it's also less time intensive than sitting down and writing 3 posts a week when you're getting started.
Right, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, just looking at like whoever you follow some influencers, follow people that you like in that subject, right? And then just look at like, what are they talking about? And just have a comment, like write a quick comment and just talk about it, right? And there's a lot of things where you can just add your conversations, add new insights. And they're like, hey, like I love her insight. I love his insight. Let me look at her profile. Just really starting small at the end of the day. So absolutely, I love that. And what weekly micro practices do you recommend, right, to sustain that creative energy and avoid burnout, right? Because I know that creative energy is hard, especially when you have so much on your plate, even though it has to come from within. But what are your micro practices that you recommend or you use?
I have to walk. I go when it's nicer out and it's not the frigid tundra that is New England right now. Even just 15, 20 minutes to clear my head, get out in nature, move my body, that shakes things out for me so much. And so while doing in tandem with that, I always recommend having a solid system for capturing your inspiration. So it's less tactically important, but more so that you have access on mobile and desktop. So if I'm out on a walk, I can jot it down, do a voice memo, something like that. And then I have a process to then capture the insights, the ideas, and turn those into backlog of posts or just an inspiration board so that if I sit down and feel inspired, I have these ideas that came from me. So for me, it's moving my body, but then in tandem with a tactical, this is how I capture and systematize the inspiration that shakes out.
Right. I love that. I love that. Yeah. I love how you're looking at different angles. Like it's not just career, but it's also like health, right? And, go for a walk, but also love the voice memos. That's a great idea. I just we have like a brainstorming bucket that I had. I just write down. So anything that comes in or creative or Pinterest board, I just put it on there. But also voice memos are a great idea. So then you can just take that and put it into like a nice post, right? So absolutely.
Yeah, or even if it's not to dump into a post, but just to capture the essence of the idea while I'm feeling inspired. My energy comes through different when I'm talking. Sometimes I listen back and I'm like, "Ooh, I was smart that day."
Right. Yeah. Like I was confident, I was smart. Let's get going. Yeah. Like it
Yeah.
can do that. Yeah. And I can see that in yours right now. I just love your presence, by the way. It
Thank
just
you.
comes out. So yeah, amazing. I love this. A lot of great insights. So what's next for Sargent Digital? Like any new offerings or visions you're calling in to help companies win on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, I have monthly support where I partner with a company to help them manage their LinkedIn presence from a corporate perspective. And then also I work with sales teams and marketing teams to help them learn to fish, so to speak. So I do social selling training for sales and biz dev teams, making sure that they can take that presence, that company page profile, and use that as a wedge to start having conversations and opening doors. And then I work with marketing teams to help them support their C-level executives or subject matter experts and really operationalize their thought leaders. It's a little bit different than employee engagement, but again, there's a lot of teams that don't want to or don't have the money to fully outsource that. So how can you create a program in-house? And so I work with teams to help them roll that out too.
Amazing. I love this. Well, so excited for you. You're doing such an amazing job. So congrats. So amazing and fun rapid fire round.
Oh, geez.
So most of them we already really talked about, but a belief about money, right, that you've had to unlearn as an entrepreneur working with B2B leaders.
So a little bit less about money, but more when I shifted to my own business, I was so conditioned to be at my desk from 9 to 5. And it felt like, but no one was putting that pressure on me. And this sounds so silly, but I had this aha moment that I was like, I don't have to be at my desk at 9 a.m. And it's, I can do other things. So now I have a routine where after we get the kids off to school, I take a walk, I get myself ready, I gather myself, I can plan out my day, and then I can start closer to 10 because it allows me to still get some of that self-care and mindset work and whatnot. So I sit down and I'm ready and more productive for my clients. So a little bit less about money, but more about a shift from these conditioned remnants that I can build the business that works for me in this season of life.
So it doesn't have to be with burnout and all this hustle and grind. So whatever works for you. And I love that. So that's inspiring, honestly. And if your LinkedIn strategy had a headline, what would it be? Just a fun question.
I mean, I think it's from meth to memorable. That is my headline right now. For me, you have to be having some fun. And so I try and help my clients find their own version of fun. Sometimes it's not as easy with like cold storage or cybersecurity, but there are ways because, again, at the end of the day, there's someone on the other side of the table. So as much as it is a professional platform, life's too short. I don't know that that's a headline, but it's something that in my day-to-day, I have to be finding the joy, and I try and help others find the joy in this very, I don't want to say necessary evil, but it's a space where I fully believe in the power of showing up. So let's just do it in a way that's actually fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, I love this. I love this. And this is such an important message for people out there on LinkedIn, because people think like, I have to be perfect, but you don't have to, right? Just be you, have fun, and, just do what aligns with you. And you'll see that it's so much easier to get not only your voice and message out there, but also to have like a structure and get your clients and all of that if you are a founder or an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Jaclyn, this conversation felt like a reset of how we think about growth and presence. So what stayed with me is like a reminder again that growth doesn't come from chasing like tactics, or we're not talking about bro marketing here, but it comes from clarity, right? Of self, presence, and the courage to lead with story. So your insights were kind of really like translating lived experience into real pipeline offer is like really powerful, right? Without sacrificing integrity. So for everyone listening now, I invite you to reflect on this question. So where might you be hiding behind just only strategy when your story, your voice is actually the most powerful growth lever you have, right? Because owning your voice isn't just about visibility, but it's about trust and it's about leadership. It's really about the legacy you're building, right? Through how you show up every day. So think about your why and your mission when you're posting content. So Jaclyn, thank you for your clarity and your wisdom and the way you just bridge strategy with humanity, right? I love your presence and your energy. So keep going. It's been such a joy having you on Voices of Impact. So, and to our listeners, this season is really about deeper conversations, embodied leadership, and rethinking how we grow, right? So personally, professionally, and collectively, right? So I'll be sharing more about behind the scenes insights as we continue this journey together. So if this conversation resonated, feel free to connect with me and with Jaclyn on LinkedIn, and stay tuned for what's coming next inside this community. So until next time, remember that growth doesn't come from being louder. It comes from being clearer, being more human, and brave enough to lead with your voice and live the legacy you're creating in real time.